In modern society, public streets and sidewalks serve as shared spaces where individuals exercise their freedom of movement and expression. However, this openness sometimes leads to encounters with strangers who initiate conversations, follow or behave in ways that cause discomfort or fear. Understanding your legal rights, practical response strategies, and the boundaries of lawful self-defense empowers you to protect your personal space without unnecessary escalation or legal risk. This is particularly relevant in jurisdictions like Nebraska, where laws balance individual liberties with public safety. Every person has the fundamental right to be left alone in public. You are under no legal obligation to respond to, engage with, or even acknowledge a stranger who approaches you, regardless of whether their tone begins as friendly or neutral. Simply continuing to walk, avoiding eye contact, or issuing a clear verbal boundary such as "I do not want to talk. Please leave me alone," effectively communicates your wishes. These statements should be firm and repeated if necessary, ideally in a loud voice to create witnesses or capture on a recording device. Once expressed, any continued pursuit demonstrates that the contact is unwanted, shifting the encounter from casual interaction to potential harassment. Persistent following or repeated communication after a clear refusal often constitutes harassment under Nebraska law. Statutes define harassment as a knowing and willful course of conduct, encompassing repeated following, contacting, or communicating, that seriously terrifies, threatens, or intimidates the victim without legitimate purpose. Even a relatively short sequence of events can meet this threshold. Victims in such situations should prioritize safety by moving toward populated areas, stores, or well-lit locations while documenting the incident through video or audio if feasible. Promptly reporting to law enforcement provides an official record, supports potential charges, and may lead to a harassment protection order from the courts. Individuals are not required to endure ongoing unwanted attention simply because it occurs in a public place. Self-defense laws provide additional protections when verbal boundaries fail and the situation escalates. Nebraska follows general principles allowing the use of reasonable force, including non-deadly options like pepper spray, when a person reasonably believes such force is immediately necessary to protect against another's unlawful force. Pepper spray remains legal for most adults to carry and deploy in self-defense scenarios, provided its use aligns with proportionality and necessity. Importantly, Nebraska imposes a duty to retreat in public spaces when safe to do so before resorting to force, though no such duty applies inside one's home or workplace. The line between annoyance and justifiable defense often centers on the presence of unlawful force or imminent threat. Mere words, even loud or persistent ones, rarely justify physical response on their own. However, actions such as physically blocking a path, closing distance aggressively despite commands, or making threats while advancing can create reasonable fear of assault. Any unwanted physical contact, such as grabbing, pushing, or even spitting, crosses a critical threshold. Spitting, in particular, qualifies as battery because saliva constitutes offensive bodily contact that may transmit disease or cause distress. This holds true even if individual droplets are not clearly visible on video recordings. Courts evaluate the totality of circumstances, including proximity, aggressive yelling, ignored warnings, and the victim's contemporaneous statements like "Stop spitting on me." In situations involving spitting or close-range yelling that projects saliva onto skin or clothing, victims may reasonably perceive ongoing unlawful contact. A strong verbal command, "Stop spitting on me. Leave me alone," combined with pepper spray to create distance often represents a proportionate response. Recordings strengthen such claims by demonstrating repeated refusals and the aggressor's disregard, supporting both self-defense justifications and subsequent harassment or assault complaints. Law enforcement and prosecutors assess reasonableness based on what an ordinary person would believe under identical conditions, including time of day, isolation, relative sizes, and behavioral cues. Practical preparation enhances safety and legal standing. Carrying a personal recording device, knowing local non-emergency police numbers, and practicing clear verbal boundaries can de-escalate many encounters. When possible, head toward crowds or businesses rather than isolated areas. If an incident occurs, preserve all footage, note witnesses, and seek medical evaluation if bodily fluids are involved, even for documentation purposes. Self-defense training tailored to state laws helps individuals recognize the precise moment when retreat is no longer viable and defensive action becomes necessary. Ultimately, public spaces should feel secure for all. By asserting boundaries early, documenting interactions, and involving authorities when harassment persists, individuals exercise their rights while minimizing confrontation. When threats turn physical, whether through touching, blocking, or spitting, Nebraska law supports measured, reasonable responses to restore safety. Awareness of these principles fosters confidence and promotes respectful coexistence in shared environments. For personalized guidance, consulting local law enforcement or a qualified attorney ensures full alignment with current statutes and best practices.